All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Form-Based Readers Advisory for when your readers and staff are at home. My name is Angela Hirsch, and I'm the Senior Engagement Consultant for NoveList. We have an amazing panel of experts on reader recommendations today. You're going to be hearing from Melissa Andrews, Monique Christian-Long, Christy Lockhart, and myself. And a quick reminder, if you're a Library Aware customer, you're going to want to stick around after the webinar Q&A. We're going to do a short training session on how to use Library Aware email templates to send book recommendations to your patrons. So let's get started. First up is Christy Lockhart, who is the Assistant Director for the Weymouth Public Libraries in Weymouth, Massachusetts. Christy.
So hello, everybody. I'm going to be talking today about our book match service. But before I do that, I did want to tell you a little bit about us. So the Weymouth Public Libraries, we're located in Massachusetts. We're about 18 miles south of Boston. We have a population of 55,000, and our library system consists of a main library and 3 smaller branches. However, we are a deceptively small system. So Weymouth is sort of geographically spread out, and we still maintain the sense of being 4 villages instead of 1 town. So our 3 smaller branch libraries are open very limited hours. They're staffed by 1 or 2 people at a time. And our main library is actually currently closed since October 2018. We're rebuilding a brand new main library on the same site. So in the meantime, we have been working out of our little branch buildings in less than ideal conditions. And of course now, like many of you, we're not working in our buildings at all. So our RA team consists of 4 people, usually 3, but sometimes 4, the head of reference, teen librarian, our technology librarian, and sometimes myself. We have definitely done this with less people. When I first came on, it was 1 or 2 of us working on this service. Our book match recommendation lists are usually handled by the 3 of them now, in addition to a full load of desk coverage, program planning, grant writing, collection development, technology troubleshooting, and much, much more. This past year, we've all had our hands very full with planning for the new library as well. So all this is to say that this kind of service can definitely be implemented with not a lot of resources, people, or time to spare, which is what I'm sure a lot of you like to hear. So our book match service started out as something that sort of already existed but wasn't really being used. So I joined the Weymouth Public Libraries in 2016 as the head of reference. And my previous job had been at a public library where Readers Advisory was a huge focus of the reference staff. So Weymouth already had something called Book Match on their website that was survey-based, but it really wasn't being used. And there really wasn't a ton of Readers Advisory outreach in place besides the usual one-to-one interactions at the reference desk. And so we rebranded the service and emphasized the personal nature of it. So you can see our tagline here became personalized reading recommendations from real-life librarians. Especially in a smaller community, we found that the personalized aspect really appealed to our patron base. So our process is pretty straightforward. The patron fills out an online survey. Our Readers Advisory team receives notification. We discuss, we delegate, we divide. We sort of communicate between ourselves to see who's going to work on what, which is often based on interest, the amount of time we have available. Then we research titles and we compile a list. So we send it to the patron within 1 week. That's our guarantee, and we've always managed to deliver on that. So this is our survey as it currently exists online. So our library consortium was already using Google Sweep, so it made sense to continue using a Google form as the tool for the survey. When I had a look at the original survey, I thought it could be streamlined and shortened to encourage patrons to use it more frequently. So fewer checkboxes or yes and no answers, encouraging patrons to identify what they did and didn't like about books they had read. We asked questions like, what have you read lately that you liked? What have you read lately that you didn't like? Why? We really like to tease out the answers as much as possible. It's not always perfect. We will always get a lot of submissions that say things like, I like James Patterson because, and there's not much you can do about that. But we have found that for the most part, the way we've designed the survey invites people to give us a little bit more than that. One question you can't see here that we do ask is we ask the patron if we can keep their book match on file. And we find that really helpful as well, because if the patron comes back to us asking for more book match down the line or has some feedback for us, it's really useful to be able to look back at each of their lists to see what we've already recommended to them. We also sometimes, well, even though we like the service to be as personalized as possible, we will also sometimes recycle parts of lists. So, there will be times where we'll start seeing trends, that the Nightingale was so popular a few years ago, and we would, have a ton of requests for historical World War II fiction with mainly female characters. And so if we had a list that we'd already done for a patron that had some great off the beaten path titles, certainly we will reuse a lot of that hard work. For us, because we are often short-staffed and thin on the ground, we always like to find ways to work more productively on services like this. So we work really hard to work together on this service. Everyone on the RA team gets a notification when we have a new book match survey submitted. So in the pre-COVID-19 days, we all worked very close to each other. We could have just turned around and said hello, had a quick conversation about it. But nowadays, like many of you, we're using a combination of Google Chat, Google Hangouts, and Zoom calls to communicate with each other. So our reference staff discuss book matches that have come in during their weekly video meetings or just by chatting on an ongoing basis. And since we're such a small staff, we do tend to know each other's strengths quite well. It's often very apparent when we first look at a survey who's going to be the person who's really going to take the lead on it. So one person could do a whole list, but sometimes we'll collaborate as well. So each person may take one or two titles, and we'll get the list done quickly that way. So in the beginning, our book match list, what we created for a patron, looked like this. So this gives you a good sense of where we started 3 years ago. We would create the list together in a shared Google document with just text hyperlinks to our catalog. We'd dig through NoveList and other sources to compile everything that we found together. So we would have the book title, the author, the year published, a summary of the book, and then down here at the bottom, we would always have our sort of reasoning for why we had recommended it. And we found patrons particularly like this part. So we like to demonstrate that we've heard them and we've thought hard about why they would enjoy something rather than just sort of recommending titles. So we will often depend on NoveList appeal factors and connections to really help populate these quickly. We would convert it to a PDF document and then email it directly to the patron. So this was tidy. I mean, it's fine. It definitely had some real drawbacks. So it was visually not particularly appealing. We also had no real feedback unless the patron replied to the email. So we would have no idea if they were clicking the links, if they were liking the books. Sometimes we would see some of the books appear on the hold shelf and sort of pat ourselves on the back, but not always. And oftentimes they would just sort of disappear into the ether. But the biggest drawback to this system was it was really time consuming to do it this way. So one of these lists could really take us hours, and we don't have hours to spend on things like this. So this is our book match list when we switched to LibraryAware. So we had definitely been avid users of NoveList for years, and we started using it more when we invested in NoveList Plus, and then about a year ago, our consortium in Massachusetts invested in LibraryAware for newsletters, and we immediately started using it for that purpose, but we'd heard about libraries using it for RA survey-based services, and we decided to give it a try. It turned out to be very easy to make the switch, and it was a vast improvement, as I think you can see here. So obviously, we no longer have to add the summaries ourselves. LibraryAware populates that directly, so we type in the title, and it does the work, which is lovely. It's much, much faster to do these. It's very visually appealing, and we're able to send them to the patrons directly in the body of an email. And then we also know if the patron has opened it, and we know what they have clicked on, which is fantastic. So we actually have some sort of a virtual response to sending these out to people and getting some real live feedback, which is terrific for us. So currently, obviously, our libraries are closed and patrons can't check out physical materials. So we've adapted our book match survey as we're working remotely by including ebook links in here. And these are links to our Overdrive collection. So we're making sure that the books that we're including on the list are always available in our Overdrive collection. And we're lucky in Massachusetts. You can borrow from the Overdrive collections of any of the consortiums in the state if you connect your library card. So up here, we've actually included a link to a video tutorial on how to go about searching the different consortiums. And that's been really helpful to us because it's expanded the amount of books that we can include and sort of search for on the list. And so that's been really helpful. Obviously sometimes patrons have to wait for some of these books, but in general, the feedback has still been overwhelmingly positive. So we use a variety of RA resources. We use, NoveList Plus is definitely the thing we rely on the most, but we also will duck into Goodreads and Library Thing and Fiction Database sometimes. We use a really interesting, if anybody has ever seen Does the Dog Die, which is a really interesting site that helps you search specific trigger warnings in books and movies. It's not perfect, but we do have a question on our survey asking patrons if there's anything that really bothers them in books, and sometimes we'll get very specific answers. And it's helpful to be able to do a little bit of digging without having to read the book to make sure that you're not recommending something that's really going to upset the patron in a way that we don't want. We also check genre sites and lists when we get stuck, particularly if we're working on a book match for something that is not a strength of any of us. So, we have Christian fiction writers. Stop You're Killing Me is a great mystery resource, and it's all about romance. We will sometimes reuse parts of lists for common titles, which I mentioned before. And so there's little things we kept here and there of really popular books so that we can sort of plug in some titles that we know are going to be a hit. Like The Nightingale, like I mentioned before, sometimes James Patterson titles, things like that tend to come up a lot. And at least that way we can sort of say, here's 5 things at least that we know you would definitely like. So at the same time that we launched this new survey, we also started doing more RA programming, more passive marketing, encouraging patrons to try NoveList on their own. And as we did this, we found that we were growing a large base of patrons who were reading focused in their use of the library, and they really loved the personal connection they felt with the staff through these events and services. So when the main library closed for construction, we couldn't hold the programs any longer. And so we actually created a newsletter called The Librarians Recommend that I'm very grateful for now as we find ourselves providing remote service, because we had sort of already been forced into doing some of this legwork, which is terrific. And this has sort of allowed us to grow the reach of Bookmatch and NoveList as well. We sort of tie all these services together. We put this newsletter out on the 15th of every month, and it's become a really terrific platform for growing our RA reach. It's particularly useful now, obviously, and so we're still doing some of these things from our own living rooms. In this newsletter, we also do a monthly Reader's Advisory show that's also called The Librarians Recommend, that's included in the newsletter, but also posted to a number of different outlets. We do this with the help of our local cable station usually, and they have a terrific studio that's conveniently located in the basement of one of our branches. But obviously for April, this was not possible. So we managed to do, if you see on the right here, a at-home version by cobbling together Zoom recordings and other videos, and then our cable station producer sort of cobbled it all together into something watchable. So we're using this as another opportunity to promote RA. As part of this special, we've actually invited patrons to share their own video book talks on social media, which we're really excited to see as well. And so trying to sort of build Reader's Advisory as something that's particular to like a group of patrons who have a really strong feeling about these sorts of things has been really successful for us. And we're hoping to continue growing it in the future. So that's me, and I invite you to contact me with any questions afterwards as well.
All right, thank you very much, Christy. That was great. Up next is Monique Christian Long. She is a library manager at the Dallas Public Library. Monique.
All right. I am here to talk to you about the Personal Librarian Project at the Dallas Public Library. This project was started in 2018. Did someone? Okay. Is someone else moving this? Okay. This project was started in 2018 by grant funds came into our website. Each personal librarian was able to go on a photo shoot and create a profile for our website. We were able to buy marketing materials for our launch as well. Personal librarian encompasses DPL What's Next, which gives personalized reading recommendations. The personal librarians who create monthly curated content lists, newsletters, blog posts, and then the Pulp Fiction, but not just fiction, podcast, which is available where all podcasts are given. So how do we make requests? You would first visit our website, and this is what our beautiful personal librarian website looks like. And from there, you would then browse through the profiles of the personal librarians. We have 10 personal librarians total, and you can first click the picture of each personal librarian, which would take you to their curated content list. But if you're ready to ask a question, you can ask, and that will take you straight to their web form. So this is an example of a curated content list that I created recently. And these lists are created monthly from each personal librarian, and they are an opportunity for creativity. Each personal librarian takes the time to figure out what theme they want to use each month, and unless we are working on a collective theme together. And each project, each carousel links straight to our catalog. So with linking to the catalog, then you would see the different forms that the item is able to be checked out. And this includes the e-content as well on our website. If a customer is looking here and they're still unable to find what they are looking for, then they can go ahead and click Ask a Personal Librarian, and it will take them to this web form. Here you can then again select which personal librarian that you would like to respond to you, and it gives you which genres they are recommending for one more time. And then, of course, what target audience you are looking for, and then what format you're looking for. Beyond both of those things, the most important question for me as a personal librarian is, what are some of the similar books and movies that you have watched that you have loved? The reason this question is most important for me because it allows me to explore themes and books that I know that the person already likes, and give me an understanding of the expectation of what they are wanting to receive. This is an example of a response from me. The customer in this particular response wanted a diverse, speculative fiction with LGBTQ themes, which is very specific. So I really had to do my research for this one. This response was made in Library Aware through a template, and the book jackets and annotation were generated through the software. So that was very good for me. However, in the beginning of the response, I make sure that I greet the customer, and then I explain why I chose each book. How do I find these recommendations? So I have not read every single book that I have recommended, and so I rely heavily on book blogs, book review sites, and my peers who are very familiar with certain genres. But sometimes when customers are looking for certain things that are very specific, I have to do more research, and NoveList is very helpful in doing those things. So this is an example of using NoveList. So When you're using NoveList, it really helps to know the language when you're creating a search. However, I didn't always start out that way. In the beginning, I may have just searched for fantasy or African fantasy, but of course now I know I can search for Afro fantasy, which still gave me a lot of results. And as you can see from the results on this page, very different results that may or may not be what the reader is looking for. However, because of that very specific question we have on our form, knowing a book that they already like is very helpful. So if I'm able to look for a book and then narrow down the genre from there, as you can see here, for Escaping Exodus, there is a genre called space opera, which I was not aware of before I looked up this book. So now I can make that note that if they like this book, they like space opera, and so I can keep that in mind for looking for more books like this one. So you want to try to recommend at least one or two titles by an author from a diverse background when you're sending recommendations out. And go beyond Google and the bestsellers list. Most likely, your readers have already looked at the bestsellers list and read those books if they're asking you for a recommendation. You want to also use your library's resources for diverse materials, and do your research to make sure that the material that you are recommending is representative of that community and not offensive. These are two examples of solutions that we offer at the Dallas Public Library. The Young Black Reader is for children and teens of African descent. The Latinx Reads is for teens and adults of Latin heritage. These are both curated by people within those ethnic groups, and they are released bi-monthly. These are not only for our customers, but they're also for our fellow staff members to refer to as well. We print them so that they are available within the branches at our main library, but they are also sent by email. So for anyone looking to subscribe to them, you can subscribe through our website. And this form is located at the link below, along with the Personal Librarian newsletter, which is the DPL What's Next newsletter, and all of the other great newsletters that we offer at the Dallas Public Library. All you have to do is confirm your email address, and you will be good to go. You'll be able to receive this newsletter. And hopefully our upcoming newsletters are good to go for May. So if you subscribe, you should be able to get that May newsletter. And I want to leave you all with some resources for finding diverse materials. It's really important to find review sites that are vetted by people within that community. And this is not a comprehensive list. However, this is really a start for looking for a diverse book for children and adults. One thing I would like to point out, right now on the American Indian Children's Lit site, there is a book up that says, do not recommend. And as a person outside of that community, I really appreciate that because it really lets me know that that's a book I need to stay away from in order to honor the feelings of that community. And if we are making those type of considerations, then it shows that we are being thoughtful in our recommendations and that we're being supportive of all of our users. So that is about it. This is where you can reach me if you have any questions about Personal Librarian or about diverse reading recommendations. Thank you for listening.
And thank you, Monique. All right, now let's hear from Melissa Andrews, who is the Collection Development Manager for the Boston Public Library. Melissa.
Thank you. So I'm here today to talk to you about Shelf Service, which is our form-based readers advisory service. We've been using this for the last six weeks since we've been closed to the public as the main way that we're reaching out to connect with patrons and readers, as a springboard for all of our other online readers advisory services, many of which we are making up as we go or developing as we go, and about some of the ways that we've changed our approach to how we promote the service to patrons and how effective that's been. So just quickly, a look at our form. We try to keep it simple. We have one required field where we ask that patrons tell us about books or authors that they've really enjoyed. Everything else is optional. We ask, they're invited to tell us about books they don't like, genres they like to read, what they're looking for in the next book, reading level, format of book, and then their name, email, and library card number. So we are a state that offers an e-card, so we do ask that the patrons be a member, have a library card that cuts down on the number of potential responses, but anyone in the state can use the service. When patrons click submit, they'll receive, they'll see the notice that they'll get a list of recommendations within 5 to 7 days. We receive their submissions in an email format, and our reader services supervisor will assign the requests in rotation to our reader services staff. We're about a staff of 5 librarians at our main branch, and then 3 of the children's librarians in our main branch tend to respond to the children's requests. So a little bit about our background and who we are. Our main branch renovated and was renovated and reopened in 2016. As part of that renovation, we got a dedicated spot in our new building for new books and for readers advisory service. So the staff cover this service point in our main branch 65 hours a week. They spend a lot of time merchandising our new books collection to make it browsable and discoverable for patrons. They create displays, they run book groups. They also create a lot of content for our website for blog posts and recommended reading lists. So they perform readers advisory in several different facets, including shelf service. So one of the first things we did to create an online service was develop the form-based reading recommendation. And when we launched in 2017, it was very popular. We were getting about 15 or 20 requests a week. And it was available, patrons could discover it in the catalog. It was on a header in our catalog, so when they would come in to search for a book, it was discoverable there, and lots of patrons found it that way. In 2018, we had a website redesign, and we lost that spot in the catalog. It was just located on a different part of our website, but you'll see the number of responses that we got dropped pretty dramatically in the second half of 2018 and 2019. We were okay with that. We were doing lots of other different things in providing readers advisory services in public. We were happy with our 4 requests a week. It was primarily a service that we were hand selling to patrons when they would come up to the desk, when we were doing outreach, staffing tables. And then we closed to the public on March 16th. So we started asking ourselves, what can we do to continue to connect with patrons? What can staff do from home? What services can we provide online? And we, of course, already had shelf service in our back pocket. So we started promoting it a bunch of different ways, and you'll see that the number of responses that we have gotten have gone up about 200% a week. So we're now averaging about 11 or 12 requests a week, and it goes up every week. So one of the first things we did was start promoting the service on social media, which is something we had done before, but we, with every promotion, you got lots of requests. So it was always a yin and yang of how much do we want to promote and how much work do we want to do. But now we're close to the public. We miss all our patrons. We want to do lots of these. So we started promoting online. And I think that this is really important to point out because we, of course, are promoting lots of different services that we have to the public. We offer a variety of services. But I think that if you are like me, someone working from home and someone who has children in school, there are a variety of resources you are being sent all day long in different formats everywhere. There's a real information overload. So I think trying to promote services where we help people cut through all that clutter, have a personal connection, get personalized recommendations are really important. They're more important now than ever, and it's something we've been doing with fake news resources, and I think we have to think about how we can expand that service into other things that we do, including reading recommendations. And I'm also just particularly proud of this resource, or this article from the Boston Globe, talking about different resources you can get from the libraries, where our librarians giving reading recommendations is are highlighted equally with resources like Canopy, Hoopla, Overdrive, very expensive resources that patrons come to know of. And I think remembering that librarians are a service and equal to that is something we should be proud of. Probably the thing that we did that had the biggest change on the number of requests we were getting was we added a link in our catalog to this service. So when you search in our catalog, about the fourth response you get will be a link to reading recommendations. So right now, all of our print material is not available to patrons. We're not filling holds, so this is a good way to meet patrons where they are if they might be having trouble discovering new titles. I think it's also important to remember we already have lots of reading recommendations in our catalog through the NoveList content, or we're a Bibliocommons library, so lots of staff-created lists, patron-created lists. I think patrons are used to coming to the catalog already to discover tools, so this is the perfect spot to promote that service. And I know that even if you can't do this in your ILS, this is something that you can promote through Library Aware, and the idea to do this was actually something that was suggested to us by the staff at NoveList. The other thing that we started doing is our children's librarians are creating book talk videos using shelf service as a framework for those videos. So they will post Facebook Live events or videos where they teach kids where to find the form on the website. They encourage kids to walk in, to write in, to ask for recommendations, and they'll book talk the 5 requests they made based on the suggestions that we have. This has been incredibly popular. This was never a service that we promoted directly to patrons. Before we closed, we would get 1 or 2 requests a month for children's material, and now they're getting 4 a week. And I think it's only going to keep growing. It's also, when we did hand talk this service with patrons, they were always we spent a lot of time explaining like the personalized nature, and that it wasn't just an AI or a computer algorithm that would give responses. It was a librarian. So I think seeing the videos with the librarian's face explaining the service is a great way to promote that personalized service, which is more important than ever while we're all at home. So just a little bit about our requests. We do get the I like mysteries, that's all I have to go on, or I like James Patterson. But we do get a lot of very detailed requests from patrons who read in multiple genres, who know what they are looking for, know what they do not like. They will tell us about all of the 4 stories that they like, characters that they hate, settings that they like. I think one thing we've been surprised about since we closed is that patrons are still asking for resources in print, even though we're not loaning print books and patrons can't borrow them. I actually think that's a good thing. I think that means that patrons, when they approach the service, aren't using it or coming in thinking that this is the way that will help them get a book from a library, and they view it as a source that will help them discover new books and have a more personalized interaction than just borrowing an item or something that is transactional. We've also seen a big uptick in patrons who are telling us that they are looking for books that will help them elicit a certain mood or emotion. So, that's not the wrong thing. So books it touches what it means to be a human, things that will teach me about how the world, humanity and how the world is growing, something that will make me feel sad and frustrated about the character, things with happy endings, something that is hopeful, something that will make me laugh and cry, something absurd. We're getting a lot of requests for something that will capture my attention. I think that's very indicative of the world around us. So obviously, I think we all know that reading is a really important way to help deal with stress, to deal with depression, to feel connected to other people, to other cultures, and to make sense of the world around us. So more than ever, helping people discover books, to engage in the process of reading is, I think, important and really core to our values as librarians. So just a little bit about a question and how we answer it. So this is a question we got a couple weeks ago. This patron knows the kinds of authors that she likes. She knows what she does not like. No violence. And she was very specific in what she was looking for next in terms of character and themes and setting. So I picked this question because when I saw it, I had an immediate, I don't know how I would ever respond to that question. And also anecdotally, I feel like we get a lot of requests from our patrons who tell us they don't want any more books written by men, and a little bit of my jam, so personal bias, I like that. So the staff spend a lot of time talking to each other. Before we closed, they were in open office. They would talk about a lot of the requests that they got. They obviously use Goodreads. They obviously use NoveList a lot to help make sense of what the patron is looking for. So one of the ways that we use NoveList, I think most effectively, is to take the things that the patrons tell us about, run them through NoveList, look at the appeal factors, and compare what the patron may like. So obviously patrons don't have the same vocabulary that librarians have. They're not readers advisors. And I think even patrons that will tell you that, I don't like that Bella Swan, would never say, I like books that are stylistically complex. They just don't use the same vocabulary that we have. So running them through NoveList, look at the appeal firms is a great way to understand more about what the patron is looking for, how they are approaching the authors and the titles, and helping them find the next book. And it's also important, too, that like some of the things that they like and they don't like may have the same appeal factors, and they're just coming in from different points of reference. Oh, I did it again. And here's a look at our response. We used the form in Library Aware. NoveList spent a lot of time with us when we first set up about 4 years ago, making the response, the form, look like our library service and our library branding to make it customized. We try to summarize the response that we got from the patron, and then, like my fellow panelist said, it's very easy to use Library Aware. It brings in the jacket, it brings in the annotations, so we don't have to write it. Since we've been closed, we've been trying to link directly to content that is available digitally, so we can link to the ebook format, or we can also link out to Overdrive or Hoopla or other resources that we have. And then I just want to leave you with one of the best follow-up emails we've ever gotten, which is it greedy to ask for more recommendations? And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anyone at any time.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Melissa. So now that we all have lots of tips from Christy, Monique, and Melissa, and you're raring to go with reading recommendations, let's talk a little bit about how to promote your books online. Once you have a process in place, of course, you're going to want to promote that you have a reader's advisory service as part of your overall collection marketing. You can do that when your library is actually open in person and with signage, as some of our panelists have talked about. But right now, we want to promote our collection and reader's advisory on digital platform, and even after our libraries reopen. And there are lots of reasons for that. The Pew Research Institute did a survey of library card holders and found that most people get a card because they want to check out the books. And research shows us that we need to make sure our cardholders see a message 7 times before they are finally moved to act. That's called the marketing rule of 7. So you want to make sure that your community knows about your collection and your reader's advisory and talk about it in a variety of places so you can get it in front of all the eyes that you need to. My favorite way to do this is through email, and people love getting emails from the library. It's always good news, and it can help boost your circulation. There are a couple of options that you can use to promote your books through email. You can send a newsletter with multiple book recommendations in it. You can do new titles in a particular format, like ebooks or graphic novels, or you can promote books in a theme, like space adventures or Amish romance. And of course, to be successful, you're going to want to pick books that your audience will want to read. If you're doing form-based reading recommendations, you're going to have some data about what kind of books your readers are requesting, and that can really help you to decide what kind of books to promote outside of reader recommendations in your emails. You can also just look at what's circulating best in your library. Look at the return shelves. And like many of our panelists said, they read blogs and look at magazines to try to figure out what kinds of titles are getting buzz and what the trends are in publishing. You can also just ask your patrons what it is that they want to read on social media. It's really good if you are doing a lot of promotion of new titles to make sure that you also recommend in your emails a read-alike. That's good for 2 reasons. One, of course, it exposes your patrons to titles and to authors that they might not have otherwise known about. It also helps to keep them engaged with your library while they're waiting for their hold on the new title to come up in the queue. It's very important if you're emailing circulation or collection items to your card holders to make sure that you actually track the effectiveness of those emails. And it's very simple to do. Just before you send the email out, write down the number of holds and checkouts on each of the titles that you're promoting, and then a week later, check the numbers again. If there's an increase, congratulations. It's probably due to your email, particularly right now when people can't walk into a building and pull a book off a shelf. And that's going to help you prove the value of using email to promote your collections. The second way that you can promote your collections and your Reader's Advisory services is through social media. You heard some talk about that, especially with Christy at Weymouth. Social media has one additional benefit, which is that it reaches non-card holders who might not have walked into your library building or engaged with your library in the past couple of years. And there are a lot of fun things that you can do on social to promote your collection. You can hold a conversation about a book with your followers in real time, especially on Facebook or Twitter. Like this library on the left of my slide did, you can do a book of the day on Instagram. That's basically like doing a book talk, but you're just using slides to illustrate your recommendations. Of course, you can ask your card holders what they're reading. You can share what your library staff is reading. If there's a highly anticipated book that's released and your library adds that to its catalog, you can do a big announcement on social media. You can ask your followers to comment when they add that book to their reading list or when they place it on hold. Like Christy does at Weymouth, you can ask readers to share reviews of books, even if it's just a few lines about why they may or may not have liked the book. And of course, you can do all of this live streaming on a couple of platforms, particularly Facebook and Instagram, and that's very engaging and fun for your followers, particularly right now. Helps to fight the loneliness of social isolation. It makes them feel like a part of a community. You can even promote different books on different social media platforms if you think a bit about the audience that comes to each of the platforms. You can try to match the book to the audience. So for instance, this particular library did a list of cookbook recommendations because restaurants are closed on LinkedIn. Self-help books, career books do really well on LinkedIn as well. I really love using Pinterest to promote new books. You have to think of Pinterest a lot as more of a search engine than a social media platform. And we know that people come to Pinterest looking for books, so it's great to have your new titles there or your buzzy titles there because people can find a direct link to your catalog on Pinterest. The third thing you should do to promote your collection digitally is to place it front and center on your website. Remember that Pew Institute survey we talked about earlier? People want to check things out, so we want to make sure that they know exactly how to find the books and that it's right in front of them. And you can do this in a lot of ways. You can choose a couple books each week to highlight in a rotating carousel. So it's the first thing that people see when they log onto your website. You can create reading lists and post them to your website. If you do book talks on social media or if you do readers' recommendations, you can promote that on your library homepage as well. Promoting books helps to increase circulation in your library, which we all need. And again, we want to make sure that people are able to find the thing that they want the most from us, which is the collection, front and center on your library website. So definitely market your collection right at the beginning of your web page. I heard a librarian recently say that reading is like fairy dust, and I think that's so true. Many of our readers are really hungry to find the next book that they're going to love. So be sure your library is loud and proud about marketing your collection and your Reader's Advisory, and you're going to see increased circulation and happy card holders. So we've come to the question and answer session of our webinar, and we have a ton of fantastic questions from our viewers. And let's see, I'm going to go up to the top again here. I have a question actually for Monique, so you might want to unmute yourself. Somebody has asked, if you ever come back, if you ever have one of your readers that you sent a reader recommendation to, if they've ever come back to say that you've totally missed the mark for them, and how do you handle it?
Not to my knowledge. I have not.
Have any of the other panelists had that problem?
Like that.
Have Melissa or Christy, have you had that issue ever?
I can think of one time where we had a patron who wrote back and said, I've read all these requests, can you send me more? And we had to go through that a few times because she was a very voracious reader, and we just kept trying to get more and more obscure. That's the only one I think that comes to mind.
Okay, fantastic. We do have a question for Christy. Someone asked if you can say something about the volume of the book match requests that you receive.
Yeah, so definitely, I'm sure this is true for everybody. It does vary quite a bit. So we'll have weeks go by where we don't have any. We do tend to see surges, I think like everybody, after we advertise on social media, or every month we send out the Librarians Recommend newsletter on the 15th. So the week following that, we tend to have a lot of book matches to do, which is something we do keep in mind workflow-wise. It would be great if they came in a more steady fashion, but we haven't quite yet found a way to make that happen.
I think this question can be answered by anyone, so if you want to answer it, just go ahead and jump in. Somebody asked, I would love to know more about the reasoning behind whether or not you require a library card number to use your personalized reader recommendation service.
So this is Monique. We do not require a library card for ours and at Dallas Public Library. And I really think it's because we want anyone who wants to use the service to be able to use it. And I think that's really the only reason. Because we use this really to get books from elsewhere, even if you don't necessarily use our library. So we didn't want to put limits on it.
Okay. Anybody else want to address that question?
So at Boston, we do ask for the library card, and we did that as a way to limit the number of requests we were getting, because we were initially getting quite a bit, and it was a way to just streamline the service. And we do offer anyone in the state to use the service. We have a pretty broad patron base. That's why.
Okay.
And I will say just quickly that we don't require it, although it is a field on the survey. And surprisingly, I can count probably on one hand the number of times that somebody hasn't put in a library card, which is interesting. So they're not always a resident of our town, but they're usually a member of our library consortium. But we're, because we don't have an e-card option, we do want to make it accessible to anybody who wants to use it quickly.
Another question is, how do you handle children's internet privacy issues with your Reader's Advisory form? Melissa, do you want to start?
So on the videos that the children's librarians make, I don't think that they are showing the children's names. I think they're just talking broadly about the themes. We do offer a kids card. They're not being published, so it's, I think just like any other reference question that you'd get from a patron that was a child.
Okay. Somebody asked, they say they have an overwhelming response when they promote their Reader's Advisory in their monthly e-blast. I have a little bit of experience with this. When I worked at the Cincinnati Public Library, we had a Reader's Advisory service, and it would blow up anytime we sent an e-blast. So this person wanted to know about some ideas for promoting that creates a steadier flow, and I would recommend just promoting it on one platform, or if you have the ability to segment your email audience, and you have the ability to send it to just like the people who've signed up for, let's say, historical fiction books this month, or the people who've signed up at one particular branch this month or this week. If you can break it into pieces and you have different newsletters and different email promotions, that's definitely something that you'll need to do to make sure that your team is not overwhelmed with the number of responses that you get from that, because it is very popular, and when you let people know about it, they do want to use that. A person asked if library staff mostly read what they want to read, or if there are certain books that they choose to read for promotional purposes. Some of you talked a little bit about how you find books, particularly in genres that you are not familiar with.
This is Monique again. I think it's a mixture. For me personally, I mostly read what I want to read. But sometimes when looking up different recommendations for others, I might find something that looks interesting. And so now I'm interested to find out more about the book, and then I'll read it.
Okay. Oh, here's a good one. Somebody asked if there are suggestions for reaching patrons who do not have internet or computer or smartphone access. Do you guys have like paper forms, or how do you go about doing that when there is no internet access available?
We do actually. We have offered in the past an option to get a printed form and then have your book match mailed to you. I have to admit, I don't know that we've ever actually had to do it, partially because I think what we have done before is printed it out and then the person came and picked it up. So we certainly try to be as flexible as possible in how we're serving people, because obviously we have some seniors who are maybe not going to use the Google form. So yeah, just try to be as adaptable as possible from your reference desk.
Okay, thank you. Melissa or Monique, do you have an answer to that question about non-access to smartphones, computers, internet?
I would
Right
say
now
that
we
before
don't
we
have
close.
any.
Oh, I'm gonna let's have Monique go first.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Right now we don't have any paper forms for personal librarian, but of course we do handle readers advisory over the phone and in person as customers come into the library.
Okay. And Melissa, you were going to say?
I was going to say primarily we would have handled those in person before we were closed.
All right. Let's see if there's any other chat questions in here that we think we'd love to hear answers to. Oh, somebody did ask, for all of the panelists, on average, how many requests do you receive a week? I think some of you went through it, but if you can do that again, and we'll start with Christy on this one. Do you know, on average, how many you get?
I mean, I would say, because we definitely have a lot of surges, so let's say we average maybe 1 to 3 a week, depending.
Okay. How about you, Melissa?
Since we've been promoting it more in the last few weeks, we're up to about 12 a week.
And Monique? Oh, good. And Monique?
About 1 or 2 a week on a regular week. When we do a promotion, it can be 10 or more.
Okay. Very good. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you are a LibraryAware customer, I encourage you to stay on, because we're going to jump right into our training for using LibraryAware to send book recommendations. I want to thank our panelists for today's webinar, Christy Lockhart, Melissa Andrews, and Monique Christian Long for joining us. I learned a ton. I hope everybody else did too. So thank you for joining us for that. And of course, if you want to learn more about NoveList and all of our Reader's Advisory products, you can go to our website at ebscohost.com/novelist. And of course, now you're excited to do form-based reader's recommendation, and we're going to talk about all the ways that you can send your suggested titles to your cardholders using LibraryAware. Again, I'm Angela Hirsch, Senior Engagement Consultant for NoveList. If you have a question for this portion of the webinar, you can go ahead and ask it in the chat section, just like you did the last time. I'm going to be answering questions in about 10 minutes. And be sure that you send your question to all participants so we can see it. The first step, of course, is going to be to let your community know that you have a Reader's Advisory service. LibraryAware really makes it easy to do. If you go to the LibraryAware homepage and type personalized reading recommendations into the search bar, you're going to get a whole list of promotional templates. We've got flyers and bookmarks and widgets, and you can use those at your reference desk once your building is open. You can promote your Reader's Advisory on your website, on social media. You can talk about it in your newsletters or in your other emails that you send to patrons. And you can put signs on your shelves to promote your new service. And once you get people to sign up to receive a recommendation, you're going to want to use LibraryAware to send your suggestions in an email to your cardholders, like Christy from Weymouth did. One of the major advantages to using email through LibraryAware over just sending your email out from your Outlook or Gmail is that you can track results more closely. So you can actually go into reports and find out if your cardholders are opening those emails and clicking on them. Those are really simple metrics, but they can help you to know whether your cardholders like the titles that you choose. Plus, all the books in your email are going to be automatically linked to your catalog, which makes it super easy for people to place holds. And as a Library Aware customer, you have a lot of templates to choose from, or you can create your own custom template. When you get ready to send your email, you just pick your titles and you hit send. And it's real easy. Here's how we do it. First thing we do is type Reader's Advisory Response into the search bar in the Library Aware homepage. Then you look over to the left, and under Refine Formats, you can click on eBlasts, and that brings up all the eBlast templates that we have created for Reader's Advisory. Then you just pick a template that you like to use and click the Create button to start creating your email. I really love this new template that we have with the yellow and green, so I'm going to use that for my example. You can change the text on any Library Aware template any way that you like. You can totally personalize it. You can make it sound like it's coming from you or be in your library's voice or tone. If you have a brand voice or tone, you can change the header up there in the green bar, and you can change any of the text in the body of your email. Once you do that and you're ready to actually add your book recommendations in, it's real easy. You just click on the gray book jacket placeholder. That's going to bring up a beautiful little toolbar, as you can see. Then you click on the words Change Book, which is the little place on the toolbar next to the two squiggly lines. You're going to get a pop-up box, and that's where you actually type in the title of the book that you are going to recommend. Once you find the book in the format that you want, you just click on the Use This Book box, and your email template will automatically populate with the book jacket and a link to the book so that your receiver can place a hold. The templates usually have room for 1 or 2 suggestions, but I know most libraries are going to want to send more than that to their cardholders, and you can actually add in as many titles as you like. Just click on the original book jacket. That's where the orange arrow is located by the girl with the louding voice. The toolbar pops up, but this time, instead of clicking Change Book, you're going to click on Add New, and a new little drop-down menu or pop-up menu is going to appear. And then you're going to click on the option to add a new book, and that's where the purple arrow is. You're going to recognize this because hitting Add a New Book takes you to the search for the book. For this example, I'm going to use A Good Neighborhood. So I did my search. When I found the format in which I wanted to recommend, I just clicked on the Use This Book button, and voila. We now have 2 books in our template. And you can actually add in as many books in this particular template as you would like. When you're all finished, you're going to click on the Save button, and then it's time to send your email to your cardholder. And to do that, you go over to Publish To. When you click on the little arrow, you're going to get a drop-down menu, and one of the selections there is Schedule Email. When you click on Schedule Email, you'll get this page, and you can choose to send this email as soon as possible, or you can schedule it in the future. You can personalize your subject line, and I always recommend that you actually use the name of the patron to whom you're sending this email to in the subject line because A, it makes it feel very personal to them, but B, it's going to help you later when you go back to look at your reports to see if that cardholder actually engaged with the email. You can change your return address. You can put in a friendly hello in the friendly from. When it's time to put in the email address of the person receiving your recommendations, you do that in the additional email address box. And when this section is all filled out, you click the yellow Save Publication event. You'll also get a notice from Library Aware when the email is sent, so you'll know that it has actually happened. Now, there is a really cool feature for those of you who have Library Aware and a NoveList account. You can put those 2 together to help you when you're finding your reading recommendations. You can actually go into NoveList. You can collect all of your reading recommendations for your specific reader in a folder in NoveList, and then you can import that folder right into your Library Aware email template. Now, your Library Aware account has to be coordinated with your NoveList account, so if you're not sure that that's happened, you just contact support and they can set it up for you. Once everything is set, instead of adding books to your template title by title, you can import the whole folder by selecting multiple records, then items by folder. And we have a really great step-by-step guide and a video that explains this whole process. We're going to drop the link for that in the chat so you can watch it. This is really a great way to save time if you have a whole lot of reader recommendation requests that you're trying to fill. Now you can actually also create an email for your reader recommendations from scratch. To do that, you're going to type the word blank into the Library Aware homepage search bar. Again, we can refine our format by eBlasts over on the left. I particularly like this 3-across book jacket eBlast that's second from the left, and that's what I'm going to use for my example. So you could pick any of those templates. Again, when you're ready to work with your template, you just hit the Create button. This is what that particular template looks like in a bigger form in the drag and drop editor. So you can change the headline that's up there in the blue section. Now this particular template does not have an annotation. It doesn't have the name, the title of the book off to the side. But some libraries may prefer this look because it's a little cleaner. And when your recipient clicks on those book jackets, it's going to take them to the link to the book. So it's a little intuitive as well. And adding books to this particular template is exactly like the other one. You just click on that gray book jacket URL box, and you're going to get the search bar. You're going to look for the book, and then you can hit use this book, and it will populate with the book jacket. Now, I know that in this particular template, you can do 6 books, but some libraries are going to want to do less than 6. You can actually delete those boxes at the bottom, and it's real easy to do. You just click on the book jacket placeholder, and then instead of clicking on change book or add new, you're going to click on the trash can icon, and that will delete the gray box. And you just do that all the way across. If you only want to do 3 recommendations and you want to get rid of that bottom row, when you get rid of it, your branding actually pops up right underneath your other book selections, and it looks beautiful and professional and pretty easy to do. So that's how you use Library Aware to promote your reader's recommendation service through email. We know that many libraries are looking for in-depth professional development for their staff, and I just want to mention that you can hire a NoveList expert to lead a training that your staff can do even remotely right now. There is more information on training on the NoveList website, and if you're interested in something like that, you can contact us by email at the email address on your screen. And if you want to email me later to talk about anything we discussed in this training or in the webinar, or to talk more about library marketing in general, my email is on the screen as well. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.